Do you feel like you don't earn enough to live on? Well, you may not be alone. More than half of working households receive some form of government assistance, whether it be accommodation supplements, working for families, or another sort of benefit. Since the mid-1980s, we've become one of the most unequal countries in the world in terms of income. So is the problem that incomes are too low for the majority of workers, or is it something else? Shortly, I'll speak to Professor Robert Wade from the London School of Economics. First, Dita DeBoni takes a look at the growing income gap.
The income of the world's top 1% has increased 60% in just 2 decades. It's good news for New Zealand's small, highly specialised yacht building industry. But whether in New Zealand or the rest of the world, the great wealth at the top of the food chain has not trickled down. In fact, the bottom half of the world's population owns less than 5% of its total wealth.
I guess the main thing that happens when you have big income gaps in a society, people start to lose their sense of each other's lives, and so trust between people breaks down, people become less involved in their community, and we lose that kind of sense of cohesion and, shared purpose that's really important for a country to move ahead.
Journalist Max Rushbrook has edited a book about how New Zealand has become one of the most unequal in terms of income distribution in the developed world. He says large-scale income inequality leads to a dysfunctional society.
An economy that's not able to draw on the talents of everybody in it is not one that's functioning at top speed. And the evidence is really clear that unequal societies have got very low social mobility.
But it wasn't always this way. New Zealand was founded on the idea of egalitarianism, for its European inhabitants at least. The Great Depression of the early 1930s caused extremes of poverty that the public abhorred. And that led to a win for Labour's Michael Joseph Savage in 1935, promising that every New Zealander had the right to a reasonable standard of living.
Our mission is to build and not to destroy the social structure.
The milk-fed years of the 1950s and 60s followed. Ostensibly everyone was in clover, until the 1980s. According to Max Rushbrook, the tough financial measures of the 80s and 90s led to a break in the social fabric of society.
People in the middle and sort of the lower end of the spectrum have relatively little control over how much they earn, how much they get paid. Whereas if you're in the top 10% of New Zealanders, the opportunities for generating really quite high incomes have never been greater.
Certainly income inequality these days is more pronounced than ever before. Half the population earns less than $24,000 a year. 73% earn under $43,000 and 90% of us earn less than $72,000 annually. But not everyone is convinced income inequality is a huge problem.
In any society where there is a freedom of choice, where you have your own choices to make in your life, there will always be a degree of income inequality, and that just reflects people's choices.
So is there a point where it becomes a problem?
I think there is a point, certainly, when inequality becomes problematic. I'm thinking of countries, for example, like Russia, where you've got this big oligarch class now, and all the rest of ordinary Russians are suffering. I think in New Zealand we still have enormous opportunities for people to progress.
Oliver Hartwich says New Zealanders still cherish the idea of equality, but Max Rushbrook says many have hardened their hearts against the poor.
New Zealanders increasingly don't see a lot of the lives of people who aren't in the same income bracket as them. And one of the things we do in the book is just tell a lot of people's real personal stories. What it's like to be a middle income family and still be struggling to make ends meet. And I think that it's by telling those stories that we'll start to break down some of the divides that are currently separating us.